Welcome. Welcome to our Athena Wisdom, New Earth and Consciousness online summit. This is our last day. This is the fourth day. And today we are most happy to welcome Kevin Cottam, who is going to speak about the nomadic mindset and what we can learn from nomadic ways of life. But before I hand over to him, I would love to introduce him. For over 40 years, Kevin has choreographed, inspired, coached, and guided world and Olympic figure skating champions, and directed the 1988 Olympic closing ceremonies. He has shared his fresh knowledge and methods with global leaders and organizations like Novartis, Club Med, Givaudan, the European Union institutions and agencies, and more. His nomadic nature has taken him to study and research nomadic cultures in Mongolia, Kenya, and Morocco, to look for the ancient wisdom we can adapt, evolve, and apply to our sustainable modern leadership and lives. Who better than nomads to learn from regards, behaviors, creativity, strategies, and direction about living and working remotely and more. This Kevin leverages, along with his elite sports and entertainment history, to work with the elite leaders of the world to evolve to greater holistic awareness and consciousness. And now, Kevin, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Simone, for that wonderful introduction. I'm really grateful. And also thanks, Alexandra, for the support that you've been giving to all of us speakers and myself included. I have to say that I'm deeply humbled and grateful for being here to share with the Athena Summit, as well as something that I'm really, truly passionate about. And I believe that it brings a different perspective as to where we're going in this and what we need to do as we move forward in this world, and to become a more sustainable world, which we need and we know needs to be dealt with. But before we get into what I have to chat about, I would like to share with you a little video. So let me just use my technology skills to get this up. And here we go. Let me see, share the screen. There we go. We dare you to evolve. Why? Because in this VUCA world, change is the only constant. We are navigating our way through an unprecedented time where the pandemic has disrupted everything. It has infused a sense of social loss, increased fear, disorientation, uncertainties, Zoom fatigue, massive job losses, and many unknowns. I'm sorry. The truth and opportunity is we are migrating and moving into a new world like we have never known before. There will be growing pains as we experience an accelerated digital transformation and discovery of novel. I'm going to start that again. I messed up. Sorry.
No worries,
we dare you to evolve. Why? Because in this VUCA world, change is the only constant. We are navigating our way through an unprecedented time where the pandemic has disrupted everything. It has infused a sense of social loss, increased fear, disorientation, uncertainties, Zoom fatigue, massive job losses, and many unknowns. The difficult truth and opportunity is we are migrating and moving into a new world like we have never known before. There will be growing pains as we experience an accelerated digital transformation and discovery of novel ways of working. How can humanity, organizations, societies cope, survive, and thrive? What will the future bring? The next evolution is now. It demands evolved leaders who are not afraid of agile, innovative thinking, be resilient, and can harness creativity while adapting and shifting their approach. For this, you need to drastically change your perspective. You need to uncover your nomadic mindset. Are you ready to evolve? Then let's go nomading together. So thank you so much. So my question to you is, are you ready to evolve? You know, as we say, and we've talked about the challenges that we have all been having, and it truly is a challenging time, is that we need to be able to find a new mindset, a new way of thinking, to be able to see not only sustainability, but also what the Athena wisdom is about, is the sustainability DG 4, which is education and also literacy and moving forward. What does this really mean? And how can we look at it from a very different perspective? And I think that from what I have found, and I wish to take you on a journey, but let's just see some of these different, I was in my screen now, I will share with you, is that we have place in the sustainability. So the sustainability, as far as I'm concerned, is really the interconnection of 4 pillars: people, planet, profit, culture, and much more. And we need to have a right balance between all of them to be able to truly be able to harness where we are and where we're going to go into the future. And so sustainability development goal 4, which is a really beautiful one, and it's very equitable around education. But let us remember that in actual fact, all these sustainable goals, which are fantastic, and truly it's been an amazing piece of work from the UN to put all of this together, is that it was done in 2015. Now that may not seem too long ago, maybe 6 years ago, but it's like eons ago now. We have been through an awful lot since then. And the world has shifted. The mindsets have shifted. The way we live has shifted. The mental health has shifted considerably. There's challenges all over the world with this. Education has shifted, and the dire need of real, true sustainability. And that's where we need to go. But what do we need to do? Before, we were living, and we're all hardwired to what I call the industrialized thinking, the agriculturalist thinking, and that's what's got us into this situation today. But there is a change, there is a shift. And I would like to say that what dear Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used to create them. And so in those old frameworks and old mindsets, old thinking, we need to shift. So I wish to share with you and to take you on a journey. And that journey is to discover what I believe is the nomadic mindset. And the nomadic mindset is where we need to be today. And I believe that the nomadic mindset is the positive disruption. It is the positive disruptor of the other 2 mindsets, the industrialized and the agriculturalist. It is also the sustainable mindset because it is so interconnected to all the factors and the pillars of people, planet, profit, and culture, and much more, in fact. So let us go on a journey. I'm going to take you on a journey of where we're going to go to discover and uncover what is the nomadic mindset. Now, the nomadic mindset, I will share with you as we go along this journey. I'm going to give you some navigational paths that can help you to move forward and to understand a different world in a different way, to look at sustainability from a very different lens, and also look at this SDG goal from a different lens, rather than just copy pasting education from what was to now. It's just, we need to look at, as far as education is concerned, is what is going to be useful now. As we saw in Africa, people leapfrogged from no telephones to an iPhone or to a mobile phone. We need to also prepare them not only with basic education, but we also need to look at what is needed for them to survive in this new world. And that takes a very different thinking than perhaps we thought about before. So I share with you that it's time for all of us to move on. But before we move on, I want to share with you maybe this mantra for SDG. There is no beginning to who you are. There is no ending to who you are. You are migrating to expansion. This is my hope for all. And this is my hope for the world, the planet. It's the way we see it, is that we're migrating. Education, we're migrating. Everything is on the move, everything. In fact, as I say all along, is that we must move on. We must move on from the way we were to the way we want to be, to whatever the future might be. We must move on from our old toothbrushes to some new toothbrushes. We need to move on from the way we worked in organizations to hybrid work, or it is remote work of some sort. Yes, we need to move on. We need to understand this. And moving on can be very challenging because we are living in the old hardwired mindsets. It won't be easy, but it will be a challenge, but it'll be exciting to move forward. So let's go forward. All right, now we're going to talk about this particular quote. October 2017, I found myself in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. The chill of winter was in the air and I could feel the razor blade coldness against my skin. It was really very difficult and I was all bundled up, as you can see here in this picture. But I was also finding it so exciting. I was to meet a young millennial student. Actually, she was a Z, now that I think about it, from the University of Mongolia. And she said to me, she says, I'm longing for the vastness of the Mongolian steppes. And she said, the massive rolling dunes and golden dunes of the Gobi Desert. She says, this is where freedom is. This is where life is. This is where you need to be agile and free and to be adaptive so that you can learn to be with the environment. The environment is always shifting and changing. We must always shift and change with it. She says, this is where you build resilience. This is where you build tenacity. I miss this, she said. And then all of a sudden, she said to me, nomads, think vastly, act narrowly. Think vastly, act narrowly, think vastly, act narrowly. Now, if we think of sustainability, we need to think vastly and then act narrowly to take functions and to take processes and strategies to move forward. If we look at education, we need to think vastly, as I was talking about before, of what is needed for today and not what's needed for yesterday, and to act narrowly and move it forward. We need to look at our own lives and to think vastly and then act narrowly. One of the challenges is that most of us wake up in a narrow framework of mind, and we stay in a narrow framework of mind. We need to move to a wide frame of mind, to expanding. We need to open in the day with an expansion. One of the things, of course, is to open with meditation. That is a great way to expand your being inside on all different levels, and then to narrow in on your functions of the day. I believe that's one thing that I do. And recently I just recovered from COVID. And what I did was I spent 2 to 3 times a day meditating to a higher frequency so that I was able to help myself through not only this COVID, which was very light, thank God, but also to be able to raise my consciousness in a very different way. So thinking vastly, acting narrowly will get us into that particular realm. And I suggest that that is one of the main factors, main looks at what is the nomadic mindset. It's very different than the industrialized and agriculturalist thinking, which tends to narrow us very quickly. So that is one of your first navigational paths as we move along on this journey. Now, as we go to the next step on our journey, I would like to share with you also, when I went to Morocco in January 2018, and in that, but before that, I spent some time with an anthropologist by the name of Roman Simonel. He's French, he's from Paris, and we spent our 3 hours together, incredible 3 hours. I was listening and listening and listening to him on so much vibrance of the Berber culture. He was sharing with me the Berber culture, which is in the Sahara, which is in the Maghreb, and also the he shared with me so many different factors about this, but we were at the Paris Mosque, which was so beautiful, having mint tea. It was a beautiful time. And he shared with me, and I asked him this question. I said to him, why do nomads migrate? And he says, they migrate to follow the rain. He said to follow the rain. Now he shared with me a story. He said in the middle, at night and in the Sahara, it's very cold, a bit chilly at night. But he said you go to bed around 7 to 8 o'clock at night and you sleep through the night and you wake up early, very early, and you walk to the highest dune or to the stony crest, whatever might be there. And you sit and you look at the expansiveness. You look at the sky. Do you see the stars, or are there any clouds in the sky? Which way are they moving? You ask yourself, where is the humidity in the air? Where is it coming from? He says what? He says that you think about all of these different aspects and you look at the birds if they're flying. This is what you do in the morning. He said, if you go on caravan, you rarely will see people. But if you do, you stop, you have tea, you eat, you talk a lot about how is the family, how is the road ahead? It's the desert ahead. And he said, finally, you come to the question, where's the rain? Now, why are you looking for the rain? They're looking for the rain because rain is life. In the Sahara, he said, you may have 3 drops in 1 month and nothing for another 3 months. He said, it's never consistent. And that is often about life. It's not consistent. And the sustainability is not consistent, but is shifting and changing our world in the climate and climate change today. Education is never consistent on an ongoing basis. It's always shifting and changing. It is about the movement. It's movement. We are never not moving. And so he says, we follow the rain. We follow the rain. You might look at this from a perspective of your own life, and you may think, it's trends, and it can be trends. What are the trends in my business? What are the trends in my industry? I need to follow the rain. COVID has asked us to start following the rain of our being. Who are we? What is it doing? What are different ways of working? How do we deal with our mental health? How do we deal with humanity? Humanity, because we weren't looking at humanity before in organizations so much. We need to be able to look at all of these, and that's following the rain. One of the very beautiful aspects of and navigational paths of the nomadic mindset. Moving right along. My next stage was to go to a quest. And I want to come back to this. As I follow the rain and think vastly, act narrowly, and follow the rain, as I say, now, one of the things that is important about all of us and individuals, and also us to look at sustainability from this point of view, but also to look at education from this point of view and how it was all developed and where we're going with that. And that is a quest. We need to look at the quest of connecting the dots backwards. How did we get into this? And the learning. As Isa Daram said, a Berber physicist, he said to me, you need a nomadic mindset to connect the dots. Why you need a nomadic mindset? And he says you need a nomadic mindset because you need the fluidity and the flow of understanding of the width of what are the dots meaning. So let me share with you my story. And my story is not something particularly different. I'm not sharing with you because of who I am or what I stand for, but also because we all have stories. And I would like you to reflect upon your stories and connect a little bit in the dots as we go along this. But this is also very nomadic in a sense. But there's also, I'm not looking just at the headlines of the life. I'm looking at what is at the base. And that's what we need to look at is under the iceberg. It's not just the top, it's under the iceberg. So let me start. In my life, I started my life on a beautiful, pristine lake on the west coast of Canada. And this is what I saw every morning, and I would beautiful mornings, and it would be gorgeous, just like in Switzerland, Simone, there's beautiful, beautiful lakes and beautiful places all over the world. And I woke up and I would play in the water and I just enjoy all of the times in the summer. And it was just magical. But when I went to school, decided to go to school, my parents decided to move on. So they moved on. They moved to the big city of Victoria on the west coast of Canada. And I went to school there. But at the same time, I started to study figure skating. And I got better and better. And I competed and I got better and better and became a champion of Canada. And that was a superb goal. But along the way, I had lots of challenges. I got bullied at school for continually from elementary into senior high school. And in fact, bullied until I was a Canadian champion. Then they stopped. Very interesting, that process. But all along, I had a lot of injuries. I certainly had my ups and down moments, depressions, all sorts of things. But at some point, that doesn't always work, right? So here I am. I became a Canadian champion, as I said, but sometimes it doesn't always work out. My partner and I happen to be the wunderkinds, apparently, with the future of ice dancing in Canada. We were very young compared to our competitors, at least 10 years younger than them. However, my father passed away and skating was a very expensive sport. And so I decided it was time to move on. I moved on to university. I moved on to study something which I loved, which was dance. And from there, I moved to New York to study because I wanted to be with the best. But at some point in that story, I decided it was time to move on. And I moved on to Paris. And I moved on to Paris and I danced at the Moulin Rouge. And I did can-can twice a night. It was quite amazing to be able to do that, starting at 10 and ending at 2. But it was mostly to learn to be able to be consistent as a performer. That's what I was really at there for. And then at some point inside of me again, something said to me, it's time to move on. So I moved back to Canada. And I moved back to Canada and I had an awful lot of wonderful experiences. And in those experiences, I was able to choreograph and to be able to work with National World Olympic Champions. And as Simone said, is that I became the director and choreographer for the closing ceremonies of the Olympics in '88. And I also, after that, I worked on very big shows. But at one point, I decided it was time to move on. So these big shows I wanted to just focus on. And in those big shows, what happened was I took on a show, and it was a little bit about my ego in many ways, is that I was going to be able to do a show called The Lion King on Ice for Disney on Ice. And I was excited because it was a title that I really loved and also a property that I love very much. So I was able to adapt it. 4 months into the development of it, the producer said to me, we don't have the rights from Disney, and so we have to change it. My heart dropped. My gut dropped. Everything. I was just not very happy about this because that was really the only title that I loved about it. I continued on because I needed the money. I'd given up everything else. I also wanted the fame of being able to do that. But at the same time, my body started to ache. My body started to speak. I got sciatica very badly and I could barely stand. So I had to sit down a lot. Finally, through therapies, I got better, but I was still continuing to work on this show. 3 weeks into the beautiful rehearsal period, which was so rich and so wonderful, all of a sudden, the producer came in. He says, I want to see what you've done. He saw. Then afterwards, he said to me, I want to talk to you. He pulled me into an old dressing room in the back of an ice rink, rather smelly as it was. And he says, I don't like what you're doing. I want you to collect your skates, go out the back door, and never come back again, and do not speak to anyone. My heart dropped. I was fired. I was fired, and I thought I'd lost everything in my life. I'd lost my soul, I'd lost my spirit, I'd lost my creativity, I'd lost everything that I thought. And from then on, it took me 6 months to get back on my feet. And I took small steps, little steps to move back. I would move on, trying to accomplish one step, then another. I got a book called The Artist's Way, and I started to work on that with Julia Cameron. Amazing book. And it brought back my creativity very, very rapidly. I also, at this point, discovered and found my guru. I found meditation, and I found a new way forward. After I found my guru in meditation, I realized when I connected the dots back on this show, is that the voices were all there of why I should not be doing it. But I pursued it for my ego. I pursued it for a variety of other reasons, money and fame, of which I didn't receive, right? But I learned something. I learned at that point, I will never do a show unless it's from my heart. And that's what I said to myself, and that's what I continue to do. So zooming forward past that, I created a variety of other shows for holiday nights, big shows, touring shows, and it was magical. And at some point along that line, I ended up also finding coaching. So I started to coach, and that is what I love to do today. And my coaching is very nomadic in its way. But I started to teach started to coach at the EU. And then I thought, okay, if I'm going to be a speaker, I know how to train people, I need to know how to speak. And so that's what I took up. But as we all do, at some points I had to move on. So I moved on to other places, and eventually I'm now here in Singapore. But I found that I needed something else in my life. I needed something else to make me move forward, another purpose, a reason. And that's when I found the nomadic mindset. It appeared to me, it came as a seed, everything fell into place. So I knew that this was important, but I kept moving on. I moved on to the research, and this was what was wonderful. And so now I speak about it. And then also, one of the things that really got me was sitting in a yurt, as I am here with Ravdan in Mongolia. I asked him a lot of first world questions like I would do in a lot of the different aspects of this life, of my research. And I asked him, I said, why do you move on? Why do you migrate every season? And he says, we do this to create a better life. To create a better life. And all of a sudden I went ping in my head. And all of a sudden at that point, I started to connect the dots back. And I realized that all of the situations of where people would say to me, why are you moving on? What are you running away from? Why don't you just stay put? You're very well known in what you do. You're making a lot of money. Why are you keeping on going, moving on? Stay put, stay settled, stay. And I realized at that point that I was not running away. I was actually running towards. I was running towards a newer purpose, to explore and to expand and to merge, experience new experiences and to expand. That was what was important. And the importance of that was that exploration. And that is part of the nomadic mindset. It's the freedom and openness, as I had said, about thinking vastly, acting narrowly. To follow the rain, I was following the rain. That was my life. So I invite you all to connect your dots, not just the headlines of the dots, but what's underneath it. What's the purpose underneath? And this, I invite you to go nomading to find the source. And I know that the source is beautiful and shining for you. But then it was also important. I moved to Kenya. Kenya was a great place. Kenya is where the land of the Maasai are in the Masai Mara in southern Kenya, next to the Serengeti in Tanzania. And I went there because I wanted to study and know more about the Maasai and the wisdom of the ancient culture and the culture which is very strong and very prominent. This is what I saw out of on my balcony from the Marasimba Lodge. And I've had these visions and these wonderful visions of where am I? What is out there? What are the animals? Where are they going? What is happening? What is the sound? What are the sounds? All of this was magic to me. And what I'm interested in, I was learning about the Maasai. The Maasai, the long walkers, they walk for miles and miles and miles, kilometers and kilometers. And they're the tall, lanky. They wear red shukas. These are red shukas that they're wearing. And they told me, why do they wear red shukas? They wear red because they say the lions are afraid of red. Think about that. Why do you wear red? It's an interesting place. This is part of the nomadic mindset, is that strength, that long walking, that exploration. But most of all, I wanted to have a chat with a fellow that I had met, and his name was Benson. And Benson was a warrior. He had gone through the warrior status and being the coming of age. And I was curious, what is this coming of age of the Messiah? Because it's known historically to be vast and also one of the strongest coming of ages. And they still do it, but in a very different way, because they're not allowed to kill a lion anymore. However, what was so important for me in this particular realm was the understanding that what was Benson about? What could he share with me about his culture? Benson sat so still in front of me, a very tall, long spine, just like you would see here, a long neck. And his big eyes were piercing through me, just staring at me. And he was as still as could be. I could not see his body even breathing. And he was as alert as could be. And his observation, I could sense, was 360 degrees. He was curious. He was listening to all of my questions. And I could sense that he was not just using his cognitive facilities, but his intuition was driving his answers. So I asked him, why do you migrate? I was fascinated. Why do animals migrate, in fact, I asked. And I'm sure that every one of you knows the reason why animals migrate. And of course, they do seasonally. And they do seasonally because the ground has become eaten, and so it's not as rich anymore. So they move to a rich pasture in Serengeti or back again, depending on the season. And they do that for survival. They do that for growth. They do that to munch. If you think of a metaphor of moving from place to place, and even in our mind, just moving from place to place, it's for new ideas, to enrich, to be able to strengthen ourselves so that we're strong not only physically, but mentally. But he also said that there's another reason. He said the reason is they give birth. I instantly went to another ping. It's like giving birth. What does that mean? That means that we give birth to ideas, to creation. We give birth to new ideas, and as I said, but the creativity, but we also give birth to different relationships. We give birth to everything. This is part of the nomadic mindset. Is this migration? And I sat there and I thought about it for a moment. And Benson, he then said to me, he said, we have these different aspirationals and these nomadic navigational assets. He said, we're very still and we must be very still. We need to be alert. We need to observe. We need to listen, to be curious and intuitive, as I had said before. And I noticed that they were so interconnected, not only in Mongolia, but in Morocco as well, that the nomadic cultures have this and they do them all at the same time. Whereas I think most of us have a hard enough time to do one at a time. But we have the interventions that we can use to enhance these and to encourage these. And these are what we need to do as a coach, as a mentor, as anyone that is a listener, anyone that is a guide, is to be able to do and to live in these navigational assets. These are part of the nomadic mindset. And then he said to me, he said, we as a nation, as a tribe, we are migrating. Where we were is not where we are evolving. We are migrating. Where we were, is not where we are evolving. That was in 2017. But listen, here we are in 2021, almost in 2022. This is exactly what we're doing. We are migrating. We are migrating our ideas. We're migrating our thoughts. We're migrating through digital transformation, through different ways of working. All of the things that I said in the video, we are migrating. We are evolving. Where we were before COVID is not where we are now. But we need to be able to see from a different perspective so that we're able to do that. And these are navigational assets to be able to do that. There's a fellow by the name of, he's a futurist. His name is Dr. Parag Khanna. And Dr. Parag Khanna has a book which is coming out called Move. And this is about migration, the next great migration. When we talk about sustainability in the planet, because of the climate change, migration is going to be massive and is going to be moving upwards. And we have to forget about the borders. And this is what he talks about, the human geography. Benson was talking about the adaptation, that they are adapting to the new world. They are adapting to not having to go and be a warrior and killing the lion. They are now, the lions have now become their educational marks, their exams, their teachers, all of these things. But the human geography is moving and we need to adapt. Even ourselves now, maybe it be small and short and a few people at a time. But we look at the human geography as already starting to shift. It's had a huge shift, I think it was in 2015, with all of from Syria. But now we have Syria again, and we have Afghanistan, the adaptation and to be able to human geography because of survival. And as Darwin says, it is not the strongest of the species that survives, not the most intelligent that survives, and not the most intelligent. It is the one that is most able to adapt to change. And so if we look at nomadic cultures, they have constantly had to adapt to the shifts and changes, not only in seasonal, but because they are interconnected to the environment and all people, all animals, all plants, the ecosystems, they're able to adapt more harmoniously because they just know that this is part of existence. When I ask them, how do you deal with change? I often would get these very strange looks from people when I would ask this question, because they would look at me and say, why are you even talking about change? Why? Because everything is just changing. You are actually spending too much time thinking about it. It just is the way it is. Life is about change, and we need to adapt to the change on an ongoing basis. But this is from the nomadic mindset. This is a different perspective we have of the industrialized and agriculturalists. That's not really the way we like to think, because we have so much comfort on an ongoing basis, perhaps too much money, too much everything, commercialization, whatever. But no, we need to think differently, a different perspective. So that comes to mindset. Mindset, how important is this? But before we get there, let's talk about the education for a bit. The education, we need to adapt. Why? Because you see the world population stats here. 32%, as they say in the Bloomberg report of 2019, is Gen Z from 8 to 25. 32%. Millennials are from 26 to 45, 31.5%. That's 33.5% of the population of the world is under 45. And then the 36.5 Gen X, baby boomer, silent generation. This is where I'm at, and perhaps some of you here online are also there. But we need to adapt to the fact that the generations below have a lot of voice, and we have to look at leaving the sustainability and this planet for them. And it's our duty, not as individuals, to find new ways, to change our ways, to change our mindset and see things from a holistic point of view, to be able to see it from a fullness of a point of view. This is what we need, to see education from a very different point of view, expansive way. Look at it from different ways of education. We're now doing it online. However, the indigenous countries, and they're not doing it online, but they are doing it in different ways. We also need to understand that we need to move. We can't just sit and learn. Our physical being must move, because that's how you develop creativity, is through the movement. I do a lot of things in walking meetings, and that actually you increase your creativity 60%. That is another way of looking at creativity and where you develop. But let's move into that mindset. Let's move back a moment. What is the meaning of nomad? What is the meaning? But before we get there, here is Jeff and his sister, Jennifer. The way I am giving back, the way I am helping to help them to adapt is to be able to support individually these two in education. And they are Maasai, and I am very grateful to be able to do this. And I also have some others that I also do. But this is about giving back. This is about seeing education from a different point of view. We're also talking about, he's training me as to more about their culture. He's teaching me on this. He sends me pictures. He talks to me. I ask him questions about what would this be for a Maasai? How would they look at it? And so it's a learning, it's a sharing. It is a collaboration. That is what is happening. And that's where we need to shift and look at how do we keep communities intact, but educate in a different way. Nomad. The word nomad means, its origins are in ancient Greek, which is nomos, which means pasture or grazing. In modern Greek, it's nomas, and that means to roam or wander. And the word nomad means, in many dictionaries and Wikipedia, is something along the lines of, which I'm sure everyone thinks about here, is a nomad is, the nomad is a tribe or a clan or a group of people that are moved from place to place to find new pastures so they can survive, and that they are without home. But that is actually not true. They always create a home wherever they are, if they're traveling or on caravan. But also, most of them are semi-nomadic now, so their homes are quite solid in that sense. So they have moved on. They have adapted in many ways. But when I was in Mongolia, I met a woman in Ulaanbaatar, and I met her at the Blue Sky Hotel Lounge. And I was sitting with her. She was a very vivacious woman. She had these beautiful big eyes and this very deep and sultry and sexy voice. And she had this vivacious smile that every time she spoke, she laughed as she did. And she worked for the National Branding Council of Mongolia. And I asked her, I said, what is the true meaning of nomad? And I already told you what the meaning of nomad is, right? But she said, no. That's not the meaning of nomad. No, she said, it is, she said, the movement of the mind. The movement of the mind, the movement of the mind. So if we think about this, this has a much broader perspective than that. And the mind is not just the brain. The mind is the heart and the intuition, the gut. These are the three minds of the nomadic mindset. And this is what I found with nomadic cultures. They're able to flow freely and move between all three minds. They think vastly, act narrowly. They follow the rain. They connect the dots and see what can be done. They look at different ways of being. They migrate. Where they were is not where they are. They are migrate. They are evolving. They're adapting. All of these things happening. This is the movement of the mind. And this is where we need to look at sustainability as the movement of the mind, and how can we shift our thoughts and ideas about how do we deal with climate change? How can we find new ideas that are interconnected with technology as well as humanity? Humanity is the driver, the well-being of humanity. But in my research, I thought, the nomadic mindset is one. And I talked about the industrialized mindset and the agriculturalist mindset. And those two I now share with you are a bit different. But before we do that, the nomadic mindset is holistic. This is a definition that I've created with this. It is the fluidly flowing, limitless movement of the mind that is always looking and exploring different paths and territories. Yes, that is what you're doing, and this is what we all are doing today. It does so with the tensions of being curious, agile, adaptive, strategic, collaborative, and more, as it strategically creates decisions and critical thinking leading towards a sustainable destination and outcomes. It is about sustainability. They've had to sustain their lives and the ability to sustain their lives. And that's what I say in one of the chapters of my book, the ability to sustain sustainability. And to be able to have the ability to sustain, we need this movement of the mind. We need the tenacity. We need the resilience. All of these things are in the nomadic mindset and live within every single one of you. come to those three mindsets that I talk about. So here are the three mindsets that I found: the nomadic, builder, and settler. The nomadic, builder, and settler, how important these are. The builder is more the industrialized mindset. The settler is more the agriculturalist mindset. Now, if you were to think about these, first of all, they all three live within every single one of you. All of us have them. We have a dominance for one more than another. It may shift depending on age, culture, finance, a variety of different reasons. They may even change within a conversation, depending on your perspective of what the conversation is about and what you might be needing out of this conversation. We shift, we flow, we move, but we're not conscious, most of us, that we're doing that. This about the nomadic mindset and what I'm talking about today is not just about sustainability, but it's consciousness, the awareness that this lives within all of us. So let me share with you just a little bit of the avatar to help you along a little bit more. If you should build a house, first of all, you need to build a house, you might need to buy the land. But then you might also have to find a designer. So you have an architect. An architect starts to look at the vision of what you want, to spend the time of the paths that you want. What do you want to spend? What is this house about for you? What do you want to do? What are the needs that you have within this house? What are the path roads? What is the way forward in the design that you need so that it's harmonious, it works for you? What is your vision? What is this? And to be able to fluidly move and shift and change. And the nomad and the architect is then creating this. And they then have to work with the builder. And the builder are the ones that are the fiduciaries, and they work fast to build it. They bring the supplies. They do all of this, and they work with the teams, and they work very diligently with the teams, and they work hard, and sometimes they overwork them. And there's sometimes way too much stress amongst it all. But the builder is there to hold and to build that vision of the architect. And the settler, they're there, the glue. They're the glue that holds the vision and the building and all of the aspects that are the aftermath once this house is built or once this building is built. They're the ones that take care of it. They're the ones, the institutional knowledge of it. They're the ones that are the harmonious, the empathetic, and dealing with the people that are living within it. They're the ones that are making sure that everything is fixed. The settlers are the ones that are the glue. So these three are there. They all have strengths and they all have shadow sides to them. But I'm not going to go into all of that right now, because what I want to do is I will share with you a LinkedIn QR code at the very end, and I will be delighted to send you the three mindsets, a chapter from my book, The Nomadic Mindset, Never Settle for Too Long. So I would like to do that. And I'm sure that you can now see where your dominance is. And if that dominance is, you need to ask yourself the next question. What is the mindset that I need more now than before? Either in my organization or to move forward in my life, to move on in my life. So let us move on. I created an assessment, in actual fact. And that assessment is, what does it do? It is an assessment tool identifying what phase an individual is on their journey towards a fully activated nomadic mindset. So I have that as one way of entry into finding out, where do you start from? What is the departure? What is the direction that we're going to go in coaching, or whichever way it would be in an institution or an organization? There was one thing that also along this line. So how did I get to all of this? When I was in Kenya, I went on a safari. Maybe some of you have been on safari. Magic happens, and the wonderment of life happens when you see and go on safari. But my guide would stop every so often, and he would say, look over here, there behind that acacia tree or those bushes, and you see the wildebeest and the family. And I would look and I'd say, I'm sorry, but I can't see. Where are you pointing to? And he would show me over there. He would point, and I would try to follow his arm. I could still not see it. He would give me the binoculars and brings it up closer, but I still didn't know where to focus on. But I said, yes, I saw it. I was very frustrated. You see, the Maasai are able to see incredibly long distance, short distance, and middle distance. Incredible vision. Think about that as a metaphor for a vision of life, vision of a perspective, vision of sustainability, vision of education. It's not all short term as we've been living. Now, organizations are starting to buy into what Paul Pullman of Unilever had said for many years. We need to start thinking more long term instead of just at the bottom line, the KPIs. So I also had this challenge when I was in Namibia, beginning of COVID. My driver, my guide, took us on a safari again to see some animals in Etosha's National Park. And he said, look over there. And I'm going, oh my God, here he goes again. Look over there behind that bush. And he did. And I couldn't see a game. I must be very blind. That's all I can say. Was not tapping into my nomadic mindset for sure. And it became very nerve-wracking at the same time. And I stopped him and I said, stop. I don't know what you're looking at. Share with me how you're seeing what you're seeing. And this is what he said. He said, I look for what doesn't fit into the picture. I look for what doesn't fit into the picture. We are constantly looking for what fits into the picture or our perspective of life. We're not looking at what doesn't fit. And that's where we'll find the answers. What I found when I was through the beginning of COVID, everybody was rushing to get digitized and online, and they were crazed about holding onto business and all sorts of things. And I was frightened from all of that in many ways. And I just come back from Namibia, so I was in a very chilled out mode. But I was saying, I'm going to wait and see, because there's something in the gap. That's what he's looking at, is looking at the gap. And only now have I realized that what is the gap? The gap between what we're needing today is the nomadic mindset. It is the disruptor of what we see in our perspective. It is a sustainable way forward, a way to look at things, perspective, making decisions, critical thinking, creativity, inclusion, diversity. You name all of these fanciful words and beautiful words that we're using today. But look for what doesn't fit into the picture. This is a really interesting aspect. Now I'm coming almost to the end of our session today. But before we leave, Benson once said to me also, he said, when you face the lion, and the lion can be COVID, the lion can be negative, it can be positive. The lion can be all sorts of things. It can be the wildebeest of a leader. It can be remote work. It can be all sorts of things. He said that when you face a lion, you need to stand, you need to be still, you need to be alert, you need to be curious, you need to listen deeply, you need to observe, you need to be intuitive, you need to be ready to pounce, you need to be ready to move on. And he said the following: you must be ready to learn how difficult the situation, the difficult truth. All of us are having to deal with the difficult truth that sustainability, the climate is changing. Those that are naysayers, those that are thinking negative or not, that is all baloney, are hiding somewhere in the bush. They're not seeing the reality, is what I would hazard to say. They're not seeing the difficult truth. They're not facing the lion. They don't want to see the lion. And many people are not seeing the lion. And to be able to face the lion, you need courage. There's a lot of uncourageous people here in this world. We need to help them. We need to help them to move on past that, to be able to be courageous, to be able to face the challenges that we have today, to be able to face education and sustainability goals from a very different perspective. You need to face sustainability, climate change, diversity, biodiversity, everything from a different perspective, a perspective that is wide. And as I reiterate, the nomadic mindset is the disruptor. Today, it is the sustainable disruptor of looking at the world from a different way. And we can all look from a different way. Every single one of us. It just is a decision as to what is this, and an awareness, right? An awareness and a consciousness. So let me just reiterate some of the navigational paths. Think vastly, act narrowly, follow the rain, connect the dots. We are migrating. Where we were is not where we are. We are evolving. Movement, the movement of the mind. Also, face the lion, courage. And look for what doesn't fit. Let me share with you a story, the final story of today. The final story is about a young fellow that I met in Namibia. And he told me his story, an incredible story of exactly which reiterates everything that I've talked about today. At 7 years old, he was in a car crash with his family. His parents were killed in the car crash. He survived. His family would not take him in. He ended up being a street kid until he was 11 years old, living under bushes, living under trees, going through dustbins, eating out of dustbins. And then a woman picked him up and said, you need to go to school. So he went to school, and he went to school with 5-year-olds. He'd never been to school, and he started to read and write at this age. He was a very intelligent boy, and he was a very quiet boy, and he lived his life in this very sort of closed, introverted way. He continued his life along there, and then at some point, it was about 13, 14, and he decided to commit suicide. It became too difficult for him. He took a very strong poison. He got rid of it out of his system. It would not stay in his system. And he survived. He moved on. And he went on to do his high school. And at some point in high school, he tried to commit suicide once again. The rope was not strong enough. He survived. This is 3 survivals. And then he went to university. He got into university, but he didn't have any money. He didn't know where to stay. A friend of his gave him a room in a jail, not in a jail cell, but where the jail attendants would live and stuff. He would walk to university 3 hours a day in the morning and 3 hours back at night. He would miss most of his classes. And at some point, he almost was killed again. And he survived. He then wrote a story, and his story got published in the newspaper in Namibia, and the president of the university found out, and they read it, and he then gave him a room to live in at the university. He then, for the last 2 years of his university, he became an honor student and one of the top in his class, I think it was top 5 in the class, and he got a double honors. And at the same time that I met him, he was in the process of applying for master's degrees. Today, he's now living and work and studying in Berlin for his master's degree in public relations and digital media. He said to me, you know, the people that were putting the food in the garbage bins didn't know how grateful I was. Then he said to me, you know, you need to, that life is a gift. You can never give up. This is Kalenga now. He is now in Berlin. He has grown up in the last 10 months, incredibly grown up now. And now he has a bright future, looking at what his future will be. But this is what he needs to believe, and they're doing. This is part of the nomadic mindset. This is part of resilience. This is part of thinking vastly, acting narrowly. This is part of all of what I've shared with you today. And all of us are so able to do it, even with all of our stuff and the way we live. And so I leave with you is to go nomadic. Find the nomadic mindset that lives deep inside of you. Look at all of these different navigational paths, because they will be able to help you. And I just wanted to share with you the final of the full of the mantra. There is no beginning to who you are. There is no ending to who you are. You are migrating to expansion. Migrate to expansion to live in the nomadic mindset. Never settle for too long. In your mind, always move, always expand to discover better routes and greener pastures. This is where great leaders thrive. This is where great people, humans, thrive. Yes, we want to thrive, then we need to find a different perspective, a different mindset, a different lens to see the world in and live in. Currently, I just wanted to share with you that I am developing a course called the Nomadic Mindset for Masterful Coaching. And I just wanted to share that that is the next stage of my development, as well as just being with you today to share with you something that is quite valuable, I believe. And I have to say that when I've done a lot of polls and a lot of speeches and a lot of talking with a lot of executives, when I ask them what is the mindset is needed more now than ever before, 80% and above comes in the nomadic mindset. So there is validity, there is research behind all of that. If you're interested in having a look at what the coaching course is, or even if you want to share it with friends, you're more than welcome. And you could just need to scan and sign just to have a look. But no, there's no obligations to any of this. The other thing that I would like you to do is to connect with me on LinkedIn. Let us share, let us be together. And also I would like to send you that chapter called The 3 Mindsets. So here we are at the end. Very grateful, truly grateful to Simone and also Alexandra. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here at the Athena Summit. I am truly honored. Namaste. Grateful to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I don't feel like adding anything, simply saying thank you. I wish all of us to develop, to enhance this nomadic mindset. And this is how we are going to close today. Thank you for sharing. You are a true storyteller, most inspiring. It's been a great, great pleasure. Wishing you a wonderful evening. And hopefully we will see each other in person one day. Thank you, Kevin.
Absolutely.
Bye now.
Thank you so much. Grateful to all of you. Lots of love.